About a month ago, a movie called Warrior of the Future came out, and Jung E delivered everything that I felt like that movie promised me. From the director of Train to Busan and also the infamously mediocre sequel to that, Peninsula, comes Jung E. In a post-apocalyptic near future, an AI lab researcher leads the efforts to end a civil war by using and cloning the brain of a heroic soldier who is none other than her own mother. Hey guys, welcome back to the video, and this for me is my review for Netflix's newest sci-fi movie, Jung E. Like I mentioned in the very beginning of this video, Netflix released a movie last December called Warrior of the Future, and it had similar concepts to this one, but that movie ended up being one of my least favorite movies of 2022. But this movie really does make up for a lot of the faults that Warrior of the Future had. From way better VFX to a story that is a lot more interesting, I just think Jung E does everything that Warriors of the Future couldn't do right. Now, before we get into all of my thoughts on Jung E, if you've seen it or want to check it out, let me know what you think of it in the comments down below. But the biggest thing I want to start off by talking about in this video is the VFX of this movie, the CGI, because it's absolutely amazing. Yeah, there are a few shots that look a little bit iffy, and that's inherently going to happen when so much of your movie is built in just CG and you also have real characters in it, so you can actually tell what the difference between the CG and the real life elements are. Whereas for a movie like Avatar, when everything is in a CG environment, you can actually not see the difference as much. But in this movie, they blend CG and reality so well, and I absolutely love how they use it here. Again, going back to that Warriors of the Future comparison, Warriors of the Future, the CG is not good at all. I mean, there's like slight moments where it's really good, but it's obviously like bad CG compared to a lot of good CG. And so I think this movie actually took its time with like building up the world properly and actually taking into account what's possible with VFX. I mean, they do some insane stuff, but they actually know like, okay, this is gonna look good and this is gonna look good. One of the biggest things is the actual robots. My biggest issue with Warriors of the Future is that everything felt like a video game. The textures didn't look real. None of the robots actually moved properly. Like, it all felt very uncanny valley-ish, if you know what I mean. But this movie, they utilize robots in a really great way, especially like the full-on robots, because in this movie, a lot of the AI are just actual people, and then they're like told to us that they're AI or not AI through story elements and stuff like that. And so I really like that the way that they implemented the AI into the story, and also using like fully robots that have to be 100% CGI, and just the way that they use the VFX and CGI in this movie, it's really well implemented. And I really like that it actually felt like they thought this through rather than saying, oh, we're just going to do it all in post. Hand in hand with the CGI is the cinematography, because I think this movie actually looks really great in general. A lot of the shot compositions, the action, which I'll talk about in just a second here, I think it all works really well. They set up this super grand tone in the very beginning of the movie, and then they kind of narrow it down to an emotional story throughout the entirety of this movie. And just the way that they bring it from such a grand scale in the very beginning and having this super awesome action sequence, and then really quickly just being able to slim it down into what seems like a one-note story at the time, but over time actually evolves and evolves and evolves. I really like the way that they put it all together, but I will also say some of the cinematography is kind of choppy in a sense. You're whipping your camera back and forth way too much, and there's already so much happening on screen that it's kind of disorienting, and I couldn't really see what was happening in the action at moments. But other than those few moments, I think the cinematography for the most part was really amazing. And like I quickly mentioned before, the action is absolutely awesome. As someone who loves just the big blockbuster action movies, I think this movie really delivered on those aspects. I think firstly, since the CGI is really great, it doesn't take you out of this world. Warrior of the Future, for example, it did have a lot of great action, but it felt like a video game. And when your characters are supposed to be real and you're supposed to actually feel and care for your character on an emotional level, but they look like a video game character in a movie, it just doesn't really work. And additionally, I think Warrior of the Future does some really cool stuff with the camera work and cinematography in terms of like swooping it through really weird places, because it's a fully CG scene. But here, obviously they're limited in the way that they can move around a scene, because a lot of the camera movement is live action, because you have a lot of live action elements here, but they still do a really great job of bringing the action together and making everything feel like it has an impact, even though it's like a big sci-fi movie and there's a bunch of people that are just like humans, robots, and it's just a great mix of a bunch of different things, and like these big turret robots and just huge army vehicles and then a big spaceship. Like, there's a bunch of grand elements, but they know how to bring it down to the center, and they get to they actually understand how to give us real impact on these super big things. And the final thing I want to talk about are the emotional beats in addition to the acting as well, because that's where the movie has its biggest flaws in my opinion. Coming from Train to Busan, I really expected an emotional core to be delivered by this director, and this movie, it has an emotional undertone, but I personally just never really connected with the characters, and I really love the twists, I really love the turns, and there's some moments in this movie that just have my jaw on the ground for how like absolutely insane or stupid or whatever it may be. It just had me really surprised, but the emotional beats by the end of this movie just didn't stick for me. There's this one huge emotional thing at the very end of the movie, and that's what you kind of leave off on, and it reminded me of Train to Busan, but I was just never really invested in this character relationship or these characters in general because the movie felt so big and like huge sci-fi to me. It felt bigger than just those two characters, which it was, but what a good movie really does, at least in my opinion, is it takes that big scale thing and then puts it onto one character, and they try to do that in the movie, and you can see that throughout this runtime, but at the end of the day, they don't end up giving us enough care about the character. At least I didn't care enough about these characters to actually be like, oh, okay, like I'm sad, whatever. Like I didn't really feel any emotion leaving this movie. There's this one side character, he's like the guy scientist type of thing. I don't want to get into too much detail about the characters because I didn't know much about characters going in, but his character has a really great emotional moment, and throughout the movie there's a lot of reveals about the character, and he really just, his character shifts a lot, and I really like that. And so I thought that character had a great emotional core, but other than that, the main character and then the other, again, I don't want to get into too many spoilers or anything like that, but yeah, the main characters in this movie, I really didn't feel like I emotionally attached to them in any way, which really caused the downfall of this movie for me personally. So at the end of the day, JUNG E is a good movie. I really think that if you enjoy big sci-fi blockbuster action films, this is the right movie for you. It has really great CGI, and I personally wasn't connected to the emotional beats of this movie, but I still really enjoyed it. Before I give you guys my score, let me know what you think of this movie in the comments down below, but I'm gonna give JUNG E a solid 6.5 out of 10. Not the best movie I've seen this year, but certainly a very enjoyable one. But that's it for my review for JUNG E. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.